Hello, welcome back to my channel. So today I kind of wanted to address something that a lot of chronically ill people deal with, and that is a lack of support. So this can mean that you just don't have the help that you need from your family. You don't have a lot of friends. A lot of times when people get sick, they lose a lot of friends because they can't socialize as much as they used to, or they're constantly flaking on their friends due to medical issues. Um, typically I feel almost like these things sort of go hand in hand. Families tend to just kind of go by the wayside, and then friends also start to kind of distance themselves. But it can present some really big issues for people who suffer with chronic health problems. This is a sort of an ongoing topic of discussion that I've had with my therapist. And so it sort of sparked this idea for this particular video because she always asks me how I cope, or how do I make it to the next day, because a lot of people in similar situations struggle to continue, going on. And so I never know how to answer her question. She asks me this almost every single time we have a session, and it baffles me sometimes how I, with a lack of any kind of support, with nobody to really talk to about my issues, with the exception of my doctors and my therapist, it's almost like, how do I get through the day? So I kind of compiled a list, and it's not really a it's going to seem a bit off topic because a lot of these things are not support systems so much as ways to self-soothe. But this is one idea, and this is something that I've been doing for a long time. And at first I was not very comfortable with it. But that was kind of connecting with people through social media. I'm not a big fan of this because and I have spoken about this in other videos, where I'm not entirely sure that all the people that you meet on social media are real. And it's very easy to get fooled or even conned. And it has happened to me where I've had people sort of take advantage of my vulnerabilities. But I would say to use social media as a sort of one-sided tool for yourself. And that does sound a bit selfish, but it's also a sort of protective measure, and it does seem to help. So an example of this is, if you've heard of the app Periscope. I believe Periscope is no longer around. I think they've closed the app, and they've integrated that live broadcasting function into Twitter. I think Facebook has the same thing, and I believe Instagram also has a live broadcasting function. And I found Periscope to be very, very helpful because it is one-sided. You're broadcasting, it's your face, and you're talking, and the audience is mostly silent. They can comment on what you're talking about, but they can't really speak to you. I do think that if you allow people to speak, they can. So you get to sort of control the environment and the dialogue. And as bad as that sounds, sometimes it can be very helpful for people who are chronically ill. Sometimes I need to vent. I don't have anybody to really talk to, with the exception of my therapist, regarding the lack of support and the other kind of interpersonal issues that I have with my family. And I have found live broadcasting to be really helpful with that, almost just like I said, as a way to vent. I believe Twitter also came out with a new feature known as Spaces, where it's almost like a phone call, which can be a little bit uncomfortable because now you are getting some verbal feedback, or you can choose to get verbal feedback from people. So again, you control the environment. You go in there, you're talking, there's people listening to you, and you can choose whether you allow them to sort of kind of chime in. Something that I've used this for, and also my therapist as well, is to get feedback. A lot of times I'm not fully aware of whether something that I'm doing that is causing conflict in my family or in my living situation, I'm not so sure if the actions I'm taking are making it better or making it worse, or if am I the problem? Are they the problem? And these platforms can give you sort of the opportunity to get feedback. There are always going to be problematic people on social media, but a lot of times you will find that people will gravitate towards your live broadcast, and whatever you're talking about, because they want to listen or they want to hear what you have to say. So I have found it useful in getting some kind of feedback regarding an experience that I'm having, and it is helpful, and it sort of gives me a little bit of guidance as to what I need to do in order to sort of make things better for myself in my current situation. A therapist is also very good for this, and I have spoken about this in a few other videos, and I am still a huge advocate of getting a therapist. And I know a lot of us with chronic health issues are kind of therapist averse, and we don't want to. We've already been sort of gaslit through our lives and told that our problems are in our head, and the last thing we want is a head doctor. And so I think sometimes it does take time to find a good therapist, but once you find that person, it is very helpful. And the therapist that I currently have, I think I've been with her for maybe a couple years or almost a couple years. She's been really, really great. And I've been really hanging on to her, because she's very good at giving me feedback. She's very good at pointing things out, that I'm not seeing in that moment, and also asking me tough questions. For example, how do you cope? What are you doing to, one of the things that she asks me at the end of every session is, what are you doing to take care of yourself? So a lot of self-care. She's kind of big on that. And that's another thing, that self-care can, you sort of have to be your own support system when you don't have family or friends there for you. And so self-care is a big one. I have been watching a lot of YouTube videos, but nothing related to medical stuff. I watch some beauty vloggers, and I try to keep what I watch as wholesome as possible. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I feel like that's what makes it relaxing, is that it's wholesome and it's positive and it's uplifting. I try to avoid all of the, weird, YouTube vlogger conflicts and stuff, because there's enough conflict in my own personal life. So I want the things that I watch to be more uplifting and fun and positive. And so I watch people on YouTube that are probably, they have smaller followings, but it's more of a family feel, and it's a more family friendly kind of YouTube channel. And I found that very helpful. I know that also developing coping skills, and I have talked about this, and I've talked about these books, the How to Be Sick series by Tony Bernard. I think I mentioned that in a recent video. Develop some coping skills. Your therapist can help you with that, or you can find some self-help books. I highly recommend those books by Tony Bernard. And developing coping skills, because like I said, you are your own support system. When you can't get support from the outside, you have to develop support from the inside. So developing some coping skills is very, very helpful. Having hobbies, if it's possible. I know that this one is kind of a tough one, because a lot of us had to give up our hobbies when we got sick. I liked watching movies and writing kind of movie reviews and stuff, and I can't watch movies as much as I used to. And I can't concentrate long enough to write about, movie that I watch or anything like that. But finding a hobby that you can do. I took up knitting for a little while, which was frustrating in the beginning, but I don't know, after I caught on to it, I enjoyed it. Reading a book is pretty easy if your focus is still okay. Just simple crafts, arts and crafts. If you enjoy cooking, even if you can't eat everything you cook, I know that there's some people that enjoy cooking for others. They enjoy cooking for their families or that kind of thing. So that's probably, a good one, as long as it doesn't make you feel bad. One of the other things, and this is sort of, this one is a bit complicated. And so I'm going to give an example of what's been going on in my life and what I've been doing as a way to sort of, I guess, self-soothe and also kind of support myself. So my living situation isn't great. I'm not going to go into detail. I may in the future do a video about it, but my living situation is not good. And I'm constantly being threatened with losing my home. And it's not, I mean, when you're sick, when you're on oxygen, hooked up to oxygen every day, and you can barely eat anything, to have somebody threaten you with losing your home is really devastating. And while the threats are not frequent, they have been repeated, and it's not something, like I said, it doesn't feel good to feel like your living situation is kind of shaky and unstable. So one of the things that I did was I started looking for an apartment. Granted, I don't qualify for an apartment. Living on Social Security and not having a good income and not having pay stubs, at least here in Southern California, you will have a very difficult time qualifying for an apartment. So I've gotten myself on waiting lists for low income housing, or for housing for disabled people. Obviously, it's not the best solution, because it takes years. Sometimes you never get an apartment because there's not a lot of availability. I'm on a couple of waiting lists for that, and I am just kind of apartment hunting. And I know that I wouldn't qualify for an apartment. I know that my income is limited, and I may not be able to pay rent for an apartment. But this sort of kind of is what I call a plan of action. And not only is it something that helps me sort of get out of that desperate place of what am I going to do if I get thrown out of my house, it gives me something to focus on. And it sort of gives me a goal in a way, even if it's sort of an impossible goal. But it takes me out of that space of I can't do anything about my situation. And you never know. To be honest, there are moments when I tell myself, you never know what could happen. You never know if there's someone that will see what situation I'm in and will be able to offer some kind of guidance. Maybe another apartment complex that they know is renting that will take a disabled person. So having a backup plan, having a plan of action, and sort of going through the motions, that has helped me. Obviously, I know that's not something that's going to help everybody. I know that there's people out there that are just like, why would I do that if I know that there's no chance for me to get an apartment? But for me, like I said, almost like acting it out kind of helps to soothe my anxiety. So I call that taking action, exploring your options. One thing that I have found that does not help, and again, this is different for all of us, but this has sort of been a kind of a repeat experience for me, is support groups. I haven't gone to many because of my medical issues. I'm limited in what I can do and where I can go. Obviously, right now we're in the middle of a pandemic. Support groups are probably not even meeting. I mean, maybe online or something. But support groups or any kind of like group situation has not been helpful for me. And I think the reason for that is that people go to support groups with the expectation that they are going to get the support, not with the expectation that they're going to have to give support. So we're all going there to take something. And I've often, gotten myself into situations with people in these groups, and, I kind of thought I was making a friend, and it turned out that it wasn't really a great situation. And it was not something that was mutually beneficial or even healthy. And so I have not found support groups to be all that great. On top of the fact that any support group that is geared towards sick people or a chronic condition, they will always have grifters. They will always have someone trying to sell you something. even if the person isn't making money off of it, there's people that always have to come up to you and tell you, oh, you should try this, and this. And if you're chronically ill, you know that we get enough suggestions off of the internet, from random people in our lives. Everybody's always telling us what we need to do to improve our health. And so I don't know. I've not found support groups or even group things. I had a recent experience with a political group, and they were doing Zoom sessions. And again, it only takes one bad apple to ruin the bunch. And there's always one or two. And again, it's that negativity that comes into the group. And when you already are dealing with a negative situation and a lack of support at home, going somewhere else, even just to distract yourself and going into a different group situation, may not be helpful, and it may actually make things worse. So I'm not a huge fan of support groups or group things. And obviously, a lot of us with illnesses can't really partake, like in hiking groups or in, other kind of big group things. So I myself, I know that support groups are like at the top of the list of getting support. I mean, they're called support groups, but I have found them to be one of the least helpful things to do. So that's what I've got for you guys today. If you have any suggestions, by the way, on how you get support or how you support yourself, please leave them in the comments, because I am looking for anything and everything to kind of get myself, to the next day, and to sort of work through what I'm going through currently. So it would be very, very helpful. I would love for you guys to share that down below, and it's going to be helpful to the other people that are watching my channel. So definitely, you're very welcome to share. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying my best to get some videos out and trying to develop this channel, because I have gotten some positive feedback from it. So I hope this helps, and I look forward to your comments, and I will see you again soon. Take care.